Mix 94.5, joining Jay and I this morning on the air is Jerry Mathers, formerly known as, well, always known as the Beaver, right, Jerry?
That's right. It's nothing I hide from. It's something I'm very proud of. It's a great show. It's the longest running show in television history. It's never been off the air in about 50 and more years. So plays all over the world. Plays in, I think it's 46 languages, and I forget how many countries. So it's really funny. Like in Japan, they have a little girl dub my voice. So not only am I speaking Japanese, but I have a little girl's voice,
Cute.
which is fine for the first 2 or 3 years. But by the end, when I'm about, I guess 11 and 12 and almost 13, I'm still speaking Japanese, and it's definitely a little girl's voice.
That's funny.
Never hit puberty in Japan.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, when I was a little girl, I grew up with Leave It to Beaver, with your show, and every day after school, I would hurry home as fast as I could. And by the way, I had to walk a mile home. And that's the truth.
In the snow, don't forget that.
Oh, of course, in the snow, yeah. And I was Catholic, so I had to wear a dumb dress. We couldn't wear pants back in those days.
That's right. All those girls had to wear those nice little dresses.
Yeah.
And little black shoes.
Yeah. And I would run home as fast as I could and sit down in front of the TV because you came on at 3:30 every day.
That was one of the things about the show. That's what gave it such prominence, is that it was actually an adult show when it started. I mean, it was a family show because at that time shows were made for an entire family to sit down and watch. And there are parts that appeal to the adults and parts that appeal to the kids. But when it went into reruns all over the world is when it really took off. There was a time where if you had like a satellite, I guess it was in the early 70s, you could watch Leave It to Beaver for about 6 hours a day, every day.
Oh my
See,
gosh.
and I would have. I would have.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have gotten through school and gotten all that good knowledge in your head.
Well, that's true. That's true. I have to ask you, before we get into the real reason why you're here, I have to ask you, do you have a favorite episode of Leave It to Beaver?
I do, but it'd be one that you never would ever imagine. And I'll tell you, a lot of people like When I Fell in the Teacup, but that's not my favorite. A lot of people like our very first one, when we send away and try to sneak an alligator into the house to raise as a pet.
Yeah, I like that one.
But my favorite is one, and in the name of it, and most people don't even know the names of the show because it doesn't come on like in a marquee or something like that. It's called Wally the Lifeguard, and it's the show when Wally is going to be a lifeguard at Friends Lake, and he goes up there and takes the test and passes, and he is out there, and he gets up there for the first day of lifeguarding, and they say, "Oh, you're not 18, you're going to be a food vendor." And June and Ward invite the Rutherfords, and I invite all my friends, and I tell them my brother's going to be a lifeguard. And all of a sudden, he's a food vendor, and then Ward, and I'm very embarrassed because all my friends say, "Oh, you lied," and things like that. And I say, how could he do this to me? And Ward says, he didn't do it to you, and he's a great brother. And you'll say, now, why would that be your favorite? Well, when we would go to the back lot on Universal Studios, Jaws Lake is what it's called now, but at that time it was Friends Lake, and that's where we did that particular episode. And in that lake, they put bass and bluegills for mosquito abatement, and Tony Dow and I were the only people that were allowed to fish in that lake. Now, you have to realize that Tony Dow was actually an Olympic athlete. Before, he had never worked as an actor. I had been working since I was 2 years old, but he had never worked as an actor, and they wanted someone that was really athletic. He did one pilot, which is what they do before they do a series, for a thing called Johnny Wildlife, and it was kind of like a Tarzan type thing, and he worked in that, and then they picked him for Leave It to Beaver. But he was an Olympic athlete. He could do things like take 3 or 4 steps, spin up in the air, do a somersault, and land on his feet. And
wow.
I couldn't absolutely do anything even like that. And I wasn't around a whole lot of other kids, so I thought everyone else could do that, and I couldn't. But on that particular show, at lunchtime, the prop man would give us fishing reels, and we would go out and fish in the lake. And I caught more of the bluegills than Tony, and the biggest bass that's ever been pulled out of that lake.
Oh, wow.
So I finally beat him at something,
yeah.
And that's why I like that show. Every time I see it, it reminds me of that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you're right. I never would have guessed that. I would have said, because my favorite is when you were in the soup bowl.
In the soup bowl, yeah.
And my sister's is when you got the bad haircut, when you got that horrible haircut.
That's right, because I lost my money, and
yep.
and I was going to join the club. I had to wear the watch cap for the whole thing.
Yeah, memories, huh?
You know what? I think it's something that everybody can relate to. Maybe not those specific things, but everyone has had something like that happen to them as they were growing up. And all the shows from Leave It to Beaver are from real life. I mean, obviously they're tweaked a lot, but all those things really did happen to kids because the writers had, Joe Conley had 7 children, and Mr. Mosier had, I think, 5.
Wow.
So, and they, take things that happened to Tony and I, too. So all the episodes in their core or kernel do come from real life.
Now, Hugh Beaumont, was he as strict as he appeared on the show? Was he?
Well, he was really an interesting person because what he really was a minister. And when he was ordained, he graduated from USC Theological School, and he was ordained, and he was, young and single, and he said, give me a very poor congregation, and he was going to go out and save the world. And then he got married and started having kids, and he needed some kind of income to be able to support his family, so he wanted to stay in the ministry, and so he became an actor because he could work part-time and still make enough money to support his family. So, I think that's what really came through with Hugh, is that being a minister was something that people could kind of relate to when he'd take the boys in and talk to us and things like that.
You know, that calming voice and everything.
Yeah,
yes.
And he was just such a nice man. I mean, he was just a really good and wonderful person. And after he finished Leave It to Beaver, he then went back to the ministry.
Oh, that's nice. And then I read somewhere where you guys all kept in touch with Barbara Billingsley always.
Oh, well, you know what? All of us have fairly much kept in touch. There's a few people that, have moved away and we've kind of lost track of. But the people in the Los Angeles area, Barbara, of course, is passed now, but she was just, a very big philanthropist. She was very big in the world of charity and giving in the Los Angeles area. And, everything about the show is, of course, not real, except how nice Barbara was. And she was just that really perfect type person that helped the community, and just a wonderful woman. And she was a nice person.
That's nice to hear. That's really nice to hear. Now, what brings you to Fort Dodge, Jerry?
Well, I'm here for the Trinity Regional Medical Center, and I'm going to give a talk tonight because after I finished Leave It to Beaver, I went to regular school and went to the service. I'm a graduate of Berkeley. I have a degree in philosophy, and I did the new Leave It to Beaver in the 80s.
I remember that. I loved it.
It was a very good show. I got to play the ward part, which was kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? I've worked all my life, and I'm going to retire. And so what I did is I bought a few companies because I'd been a banker after I graduated from college. And one of the companies I bought was a catering company, and we used to do like Judge Judy and all the studio catering. And I put on a lot of weight. And I had a friend of mine that's a doctor, and she said, you know what, you can't put on that weight and be healthy. Come in for a physical. I went in for the physical, and she said, you know what, if you don't do something about your diabetes, you'll be dead in 3 to 5 years.
Oh.
And you could have knocked me over with a feather because I didn't even realize I was sick. I didn't have, all the classic things that you think of. So I took off the weight, and people all around the country and all over the world, there's a diabetes epidemic, and people just don't realize it. So I'm going to try to make people aware of that by telling my story and telling them, what the things that they can do about it. Okay,
and you're going to be in the Decker Auditorium at Iowa Central tonight at 7 o'clock, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And people really should get there early because there's going to be some booths from Trinity Regional Medical Center, and that opens at 6.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of things that you can go around and see, and learn about how to take care of yourself a little better. And it'll be a fun night. And I'll also, just so people don't think it's just going to be about diabetes, I'll talk about a lot of the stuff that we've talked about and go into a little more detail. And so it'll be somewhat about how I got there and what I've done about it. In fact, I've had to inject insulin, but right now I'm a pre-diabetic. So through diet and exercise, it can be controlled, and that's a lot of it. It's what you eat, and how much you weigh, and what you do with your life. So we'll talk all about those things. And if you have diabetes, it's not the worst thing in the world. There are things you can do. You can still have a very, very successful and happy life. You just have to take it by the horns and throw it to the ground.
That's very encouraging. It really is. There's a lot of people who get diabetes and they're like, oh no, it's the end of the world. And you're going to tell us tonight it's not.
Well, it's not. And as I say, a lot of people just, the trouble with it is until it really comes up and smacks you in the face with some of the things that it'll do to your body, you don't really realize it. You say, oh yeah, well, I'm overweight, but I look around and everybody's overweight.
Mm-hmm.
So certain people just can't carry that extra weight, and everybody, if you get too overweight, you will probably succumb to some form of diabetes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we can't wait to hear more tonight.
Well, it sounds good. I look forward to seeing you.
We'll be there. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much.